Hello, everyone. This is another episode of Shanti Fitness, and I'm hoping that everyone is having a great week and, incorporating some fitness tip into their lives. And I'm hoping this is all helpful. Again, I'm Shanti Fitness, and I help active women professionals over 50 with issues with fitness, pain from activity, help them get rid of pain and enjoy life. Isn't that what life is all about? Enjoyment. So I'm very glad to segue right into my interview with my special guest, Crystal Beshara. And a little bit of blurb about Crystal. If those of you who don't know her, and you should follow her channel. It's amazing. And I'm not biased because I have no artistic ability, but in terms of that, but she's a very international, multi-award-winning contemporary realist painter and arts educator living in Eastern Ontario. I am going to just segue right into the interview because I think that you should hear from Crystal. So welcome, Crystal. Welcome to Shanti Fitness podcast or interview on YouTube.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I love what your mandate is, and I think this is a wonderful fit. So thank you so much for having me on as a guest.
Oh, I am honored. So let's let the audience know a little bit about you. So what is your origin story in a few minutes, and maybe tilt it towards how you got into your whole painting scenario?
Sure. So I grew up in Eastern Ontario on a little hobby farm, and both of my parents were very, very creative people. My mom was, balancing being a mom with, two kids at the time when I came around, and then four in total. But she was always painting, and we had animals. My dad was very creative as well. It was a very natural introduction to the art world for me. And even though, we were like a little family on a tiny little hobby farm, we didn't have a lot of things and a lot of stuff, but I was surrounded in nature, and then my parents really nurtured our creativity. And I've been drawing and painting since I was 4. And I always knew I would be an artist, and it was a really natural path for me.
Oh, that's amazing. And seeing some of your work also, I find people will totally be, they'll put this pieces of the picture together because, really there's a lot to be said. But so how can women professionals, so almost my target market is women professionals over 50. And like me, they'll say, well, I have no artistic ability, but I know you're a little bit more than that. So let's talk a little bit about how that relates to health and how, women can benefit from painting, even if they have, in air quotes, no talent, but I know you have a different take on that. So let's hear your take.
Sure. So I've been teaching for about, just around 25 years, actually. And what I noticed over the years, very quickly, actually, was that most of the women that were taking my classes were retired, often from nursing or being a school teacher. And they were coming to my class, many who had either been discouraged at a very young age from continuing with their art, or just never had the time and always wanted to pursue art as a career. But I would say the bulk of them were there just to have some me time, and I really watched them grow. Like a lot of my students I've had for 10 or 15 years. So it's been incredible to see their journey. And I think the number one thing that stood out to me the most was that they were getting so much from just the process and the activity itself. And while obviously it's wonderful to have a piece that you're really proud of, that you want to show your husband or your sister or your children or whatever it might be, I think the primary goal in creativity is to kind of just get back in touch and reconnect your mind and your eye-hand coordination and your heart. And I see a lot of health benefits. I think in terms of just finding something where you can just watch yourself create out of nothing. And it's very, it has effects on blood pressure and de-stressing. Like yeah, there's a lot of benefits other than, I think once you remove the expectations and the self-judgment and you release yourself from that, then you start reaping the benefits, and you do not have to be a professional artist to be able to do so.
Well, that's an amazing, take on things, because I think the average person, I mean, so I look at my clientele, we're 15 years of serving my own professionals, and, just if I took a random sampling, if I did do that, I would say 99% of them would be saying, I have no skill. I'm not going to make, a fool of myself. It's almost like the very first day they lifted a weight, because the parallels are the same. It's the same mind that goes into the workout room. It's the same mind that goes into their space of creativity. So tell me a little bit about your student. You, as you say, you have a lot of experience on teaching. So take us into that experience of kind of opening up your students to the fact that you don't have to have the talent priority. That's your job. You're going to bring it out of them like the flower blooming, correct?
Yeah.
And then tell them how their transformation, like you just spoke about that, they'll walk in and they'll find it freeing, they'll find it me time, they'll find it, something that they'll realize that it's just not about, creating a masterpiece for the gallery or their home. It's more about that self-expression. So talk a few more minutes about how you saw that as an educator, because that's
no, I'd love to. I think for me, those moments with my students are some of the best and the most touching times. And while it's wonderful to see a student create something and have a photo and say like, oh, look what I did, like this looks just like the image, I think watching their growth and watching that, the lights kind of turn on, and the feedback that I often receive from these women who are mostly in their 50s, I mean, anywhere from 45 to 85. And after the first few classes, especially with observational drawing or drawing from nature, like they would be coming back to me and saying, I feel awake in my life. I'm looking at the world differently. I'm looking at color, and I'm telling my husband or my partner to drive. I don't want to drive. I want to look out the window and watch the leaves, and they're looking at light and shadow. And I think it's a lens on life, right? And it I think integrates you more into your real world and that present moment, and it engages you in a way that you look at these everyday things that are part of your life, and you start looking at the reflection in your spoon and fork differently, or the texture in your garden, or the grass, or how would I paint those bricks on the wall if you live in the city, just everything just comes to life. And I think it creates this new vigor and enthusiasm, and ultimately I think gratitude as well for such a beautiful world and the things that we normally take for granted.
Well, that's a really fascinating take on that whole, because I have always said, because health is health, and mental health and physical health are basically the same thing, even though people try to put that, try to bifurcate the two. They try to make into two divisions and address one or the other. And, you and I both know it's all one animal. Like the brain is the brain, and what you see is what you get, literally. So, turning that focus onto art, and then, you as an educator can transform that viewpoint. That was a basic, that was a very beautiful, kind of a segue into what we're trying to do with our pandemic situation, with mental health and physical health. And I always tell my clients that, stuff happens in life and it shows up in your body and in your mind. And if you took your last few sentences, and, that's basically what I have been advising them on. Look at it as a painting on a canvas, so you wouldn't walk into a gallery and say, God, that's a horrible painting. You really, because it's in the gallery for a reason. So something's there that it's now your job. You're walking in, and it's your job to find what is it that is making this painting as special as it is, to have the authority to be hanging here in a public space. What is it delivering, and what am I not seeing? So, that's something. Have you specifically address mental health in your programs, or talk a little bit about, just basically how you would address maybe with because I know you have many classes, talk to maybe a little bit about how, an average person how would they navigate your space to come up to that experience? Let's hear about that.
Sure. So it's true. I do have a number of different classes and courses. Obviously, things have shifted because of the pandemic to online courses. But whenever I offered my in-person courses and workshops, there were always different levels. So anything from introductory level to just basic materials and techniques and that sort of thing, to some that were a bit more creative, and where people who maybe had a little bit more experience or they wanted to push themselves. And then I had a lot of courses that were designated to, I think, be able to have an environment or a platform to talk a little bit more. While I wouldn't have framed it in terms of mental health, certainly all of those aspects were very holistic, and sort of there was a gentle and natural sort of introduction to connecting our heart and our eyes and our hands and our brain. And like you said, that the one animal, for me, that would be the nature observation workshops and courses. So just really slowing things down and spending some time observing and appreciating the object in front of us, whether it was a leaf or some moss on a rock, or we were out in nature. I really love my nature retreats, so I've offered a few of those, and oftentimes it's almost always women that show up to these retreats. So it's there's definitely a need there to be fulfilled, and many of them are there again, not to walk away with a masterpiece, but to connect to themselves. And I think drawing and nature and meditation and yoga and breath work, all of those things, when you take the sort of the title away from them, they're all doing the same thing.
Yes.
And so it's a reminder when we're drawing and observing, it really is a meditation. You're taking time, you're focused on one object, and you're just slowing everything down, and you're taking away all the labels. You're not saying, oh, this is a leaf with 6 veins or whatever. You're looking at it with as a baby would for the first time, and just appreciating. And I think ultimately appreciation and gratitude is where people find their inner peace. So I think creating in whatever form, but for me, in my courses, particularly the nature retreats and workshops, do that very well.
Well, that's an amazing idea. So when the pandemic hit, were you able to transform your in-person? Because I feel maybe that's another stumbling block for a lot of people, is you feel as if art with an instructor specifically should be done in person. Otherwise, how are they going to? I mean, this was a myth with fitness too, which we instantly put on kibosh on that, because we were all able to go to the online space and figure it out. Basically, human beings are best at figuring stuff out if they put their mind to it. Yeah. So how did you figure out how did you do your I hate to use pivot, which is too overly used. How did you reshape your way of offering instruction so that it would be pandemic safe?
Yeah, so the first thing that I did was really ramp up. I had this YouTube channel that sometimes I would put some things on, but it was very infrequent. And so I definitely ramped that up, just little bite-sized videos. where people had access to this material for free.
Yeah.
And I also released on my own website, crystalbeshara.com, under the Learn section. There are several tutorials there. You can purchase like the full length tutorial. So that's the first time I ever offered online tutorials that you could purchase. So these are on-demand videos that range from 30 minutes to an hour, and they're pretty light, whimsical, sort of illustration style videos. So they're very accessible. I've had some teenagers doing them. I've had mothers and daughters doing them.
Yeah.
I've had some friends who say that they all get together at the same time virtually and do them, and then they share the progress, which is really cool. So, and they're very affordable as well. Yeah, it's pretty neat. I mean, we're very lucky to have these options to be able to do so. But yeah, so I mean, it's been funny because, like I said, I've been teaching for over 20 years, and there's my dog trying to get cozy under my tripod. And so they've always said when they left the class, like, oh my gosh, that was amazing, but like, could I take you home with me? How do I do this? That I wish you could sit on my shoulder and remind me of all the tips. So this is finally one way of being able to do that. And I think even when the classes resume, I'll still offer this as a supplement, at least, globally, or people who, missed out on the sign up opportunity in person, they'll still be able to catch the courses.
Yeah, and I think that's an amazing statement you just made about how these labels we give sometimes inhibit our ability to, get to the space where, what's your goal? If your goal is to get to a location from A to B, there's, a few ways you can think about doing that. And, we know we are all on autopilot. We get in the car and we drive there the fastest way we know how. But there's so many, as you point out, scenic ways, for example. And so, meditation is about just being awareness and blocking out the world. And the word itself means the measuring your mind. So this is a great opportunity, I think, for people in the mental health and searching for ways. And, there are those people who say, well, I can't do, air quotes, yoga, whatever that may be to them, which is probably not what it really is. But, whatever image they have is their ability. This is a great way. I would encourage people, whoever is listening, and if you have an issue with the traditional methodology of meditation or yoga, and meditation just means, focusing on what's the content of your mind is. And I'm sure Crystal's, self-paced program or video would be a great way. I took a peek at some of her videos. I would encourage everyone to you'll get caught up in that, and I give it a try to see if that's another methodology or another handle that you could. Now, what would you advise for people? Let's say they're watching you right now and then they're saying, okay, I'm going to start this. What is the first thing that they would do? Would they need to go out and get equipment? What do they need to do?
So you can start really small. I mean, little baby steps, just even a pencil and paper on, honestly, like looking at, even if you can't leave your home or you're in a confined space or situation, just picking up an object that you love and placing it in front of you on a white piece of paper, and just try sketching it, or look up blind contour drawing. That's an excellent exercise for your right brain, where you're just observing the object and not even looking at what you're drawing. It's a real challenge in many ways, but it's so satisfying because it really allows you to tune in. Those are some free options. Of course, I have lots of stuff on my YouTube that has some free videos. But in terms of the downloadable tutorials and the on-demand videos that I offer, there's a full materials list. These are so far just watercolor classes, so you would need a set of paints and paper, etc. But you can access the full materials list when you subscribe to the video. So, but yeah, you would need some paints and brushes and paper and that sort of thing. But art, like the journey of art making, can be really small and extremely budget friendly. So it just depends on, like you said, what your intention is. it doesn't have to be that you want to end up with a masterpiece in a gallery. So
Yeah, and that's a very good point, because I feel this is across the board in any discipline. For example, fitness, the first thing women tend to think about is Jane Fonda. Sometimes if I talk about weights, then they'll go to the Arnold Schwarzenegger modality. So, these images are what, prevent us. And, if you're kind of a art in general, I think the picture is my first picture has got to be perfect. Somebody's going to laugh at me. So I encourage people, like, I think there's several people like Julia Cameron, who also encourages, the artist's way, which is basically, trying to use any tools you have at your, if you want to fix a plumbing problem, a thing gushing, you don't run to the phone to get the plumber. You good in your toolbox in the kitchen, you've got that drawer, you just do whatever it needs to do. Get this to stop, so that you should. Yeah, and that's how you should treat, I think, yourself. You've provided your channel, your programs have provided another tool. Fitness provides 100 tools, and the more tools you have in that tool, but just think of it as a plumbing emergency. If you have issues with life, for example. I encourage my clients privately, of course, since I'm not a formal artist, but I do encourage them to get a blank sketch pad, like you say, scrap paper, whatever is lying around the back of a paper that's, not used, and then just draw out their issues. That frees them, because sometimes, you don't want to talk about it. But if you drew a picture of a person, and then your interaction. So those are other methodologies. Now, with your classes, would they have, tell us about the range of objects they would draw. Let's talk about your nature thing, and then we'll end with a summary of how you see fitness following into this, and, providing them with a link to your programs, and then we'll wrap this up.
So, again, I go back to my nature drawing classes. I think are probably the ones that would link up the most appropriately. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, what we do is, I mean, in person, I'll say that in terms of the in-person workshops, we get to know each other a little bit. And I start my workshops by understanding the background, and people can share a little bit of where they're coming from and whether they have experience or not. And the first thing I do is to just remind everybody to just let go of any preconceptions that they have, and to encourage themselves as they would looking at a stranger's art. Oh, I love the line there, and I love the colors that you used. And we're so kind and generous to other people, but we forget sometimes to apply that to ourselves. So I remind people to send a loving kindness message to themselves before they start, and is incredibly important, and to just let go of the judgment that can sometimes come from it. And I've had many music instructors in the past learn from me, and it's interesting. I think there's something, because artwork is so tangible, it's different than dance or music. Your results are right in front of you, and so if it doesn't look like the thing that you have in your mind, or in the object that you're drawing, I think you can be very judgmental. But remember that a masterpiece isn't created the first time you sit down in front of a piano. So it's a little patience and a little kindness to yourself goes a long way.
And I would like to wrap up and have Crystal say a few final words about how she sees her business going forward, how she can help our kind of fitness space. Where is this all going? What do you see yourself doing in the following little few years, let's say?
Yeah, so for me, I moved out of the Ottawa area, and I was offering daily classes. So now what I'd like to do is offer more like full day workshops and retreats. I think that would give people an opportunity to let go of that bustle of sometimes rushing to a 1 or 2 hour class, and to immerse themselves a little bit more deeply into the artistic practice. And certainly my home and my studio is always open for the future to hold some workshops. But I think a lot of my workshops will start focusing around observing nature and going out into the forest and just looking for objects or items or life in general that is very accessible to everybody. That's, whether it's a plant in their home or they're able to go for a small hike or go to the, Canada Agriculture Museum, whatever garden they've got access to, that would be wonderful. A lot of people go skiing and snowshoeing, and even just working from your own photos, that's an option. But yeah, going forward, I see my business being more of a retreat, and just having that opportunity to connect and share energy with other women, and just have time to kind of have our lunch together, and maybe a glass of wine later in the day, or whatever it might be, but just to slow it down and just let go of the bustle and the busyness of everyday life that I think can sometimes impede your ability to certainly connect with yourself, but also the creative flow.
Yeah, I mean, time limitations are always, well, they're part and parcel of our world. I guess, can't avoid them, but there's got to be a time of day, which is what meditation is that there's a time of day where you tell yourself for the next little while, I'm not going to think about it. It's always going to be there. I mean, that's the reality of lives you live. Now, how are these retreats were prior to, I guess, the shutdowns and so on last year? You had them live, and those are you're going to restart them once you can. Is that how this? Yeah, that sounds.
Yeah. So there are some go-to places for me. There's Gaia in Wakefield, which is a beautiful, sprawling acres of garden and lake, and they do vegan food there as well, so it's very nourishing. They have a little spa, but even where I am in L'Orignal is my little town, and so I'm kind of halfway between Ottawa and Montreal, so there's lots of gardens. We're in the countryside already, so the focus will be outdoor workshops and retreats, but I also offer or will continue to offer my abroad classes. So that I've been to Mexico and Greece and France and England, and so I can't wait to start those back up again as well. And those are usually 12-day workshops.
Okay, and so people travel with you. This is, of course, once we open up again for travel, so people will travel with you in a group, and that's also going to be on the spotlight for coming up then.
Exactly, that is my hope.
Well, no, I'm sure that's, everyone's hope is the travel will open up. I think we're getting there slowly,
but getting close.
Getting close, definitely. Any, things you want to add before we wrap up and let everybody know what a wonderful opportunity there is? I mean, people think of health and one, kind of the vectors going in one direction. I got to do this, I got to do that. But I want to tell my listeners that, just freeing yourself. I find personally fitness as a freeing thing, because how would you like to wrap up and say a little bit more about, just whatever you want, messages you want to.
Sure. So I think, again, we're living in just an incredible time right now. You've got access to so many free things, fitness talks, chat forums if you need to share your thoughts and your feelings. Certainly YouTube is a great resource, and Vimeo as well, different video platforms where at least we can feel like we're engaging in some way. But there's so much free material and very cost-effective material out there to just start your creative journey. And I think really my message to everybody is to come with it with some acceptance and some gentleness and patience, and to know and keep that intention in mind, which is to just nurture yourself. And if that comes in the or pen ink or pencil or physical fitness. It definitely, as you've reiterated, very interconnected, and it kind of completes that loop, I think, in feeling fulfilled. And it feels really good to just get marks on paper, whatever those may be. There's something very primitive that we can respond to, I think, that kind of taps into a special place for us all. So yes, I highly encourage people to try it and to, you know, just let go of that idea of I can't, as you've been saying, for sure.
Yes, and thank you very much for all of this amazing information. I'm going to drop the link to Crystal's how you can access her programs and a little bit about her. I want to thank Crystal for her time, her amazing information, her bubbly personality, and her beautiful artwork that our eyes have feasted on for this interview, because I love Crystal's work. So I encourage everyone to continue to look her up, access her programs, and get a group together and maybe do it, you know, live with a bunch of people. So that's all a very good process. So thank you all for listening. Contact notes will tell you where you can contact me in my programs and Crystal. And we look forward to our next. Until then, take care, everyone. Shanti Fitness.